Hey, folks, welcome to our webinar. This is Phil Thompson with StreamingChurch.tv. We are thrilled that you are with us today, whether you're watching us live or you're watching this recorded version of this. It's summertime here in the old Pueblo, Tucson, Arizona, but we're happy to be here with our webinar. So the webinar is called From Chaos to Clarity, Failure Proof Your Streaming. We have been doing this for a long time, and we feel like this is an important webinar for all of us who do streaming video, whether you are a veteran at it or new at it. And our goal is to help you in your streaming, your church, your ministry in streaming, and help you even prevent some potential problems. So that's what the webinar is all about. And we will have some Q&A after the webinar, but let's kind of jump into things here a little bit. I just want to remind you, though, speaking of webinars, we have past webinars that we have done for several years, and you can find them at streamingchurch.tv/webinar. And again, we are a company that does streaming video, streamingchurch.tv, but we have other products, but we also have tons of resources that we want to make available to you and your church to help you do what you do best and to help you fulfill your mission. So check out our past webinars, and you can always reach out to us. So let's meet our host today. Over on the left side is our founder and CEO. His name is Steve Lacey. Steve has been involved in ministry since he was a young adult, not necessarily on staff, but involved in leadership and behind the scenes with tech stuff. And he has a background in the aerospace industry. And as I said, he's our founder and CEO of our company. And moving along here, we also have Michael Gray, who does our tech support, also does some of our marketing. And Michael has also been involved in ministry, as church online pastor, as well as every other thing you can pretty much think of when it comes to church work for many years. And then you've got me, of course, who has a background, and because I'm so old, I've done everything since the Stone Age when it comes to ministry. But in all seriousness aside, it is a pleasure to work with this team. And you won't find a better bunch of people. I know I get under their skin at times, but these guys, I honestly don't think, permit me to get on a soapbox here a little bit, but I don't think there's any company that does what we do that has the experience, the know-how, not just in tech stuff when it comes to streaming video, but also in ministry related things, because we've all been on staff at different churches and in leadership positions. And so we understand ministry. We understand the challenges, the frustrations that it takes, or that comes along with it, I should say, and we understand what it takes to get through that stuff. So without further delay, let's just kind of jump into our webinar.
I think
We've got Michael Gray. Let's talk a little bit about inventory, all equipment.
Yeah, that several of the things we're going to say today seem redundant or silly almost. You're like, yeah, well, duh. But I have a perfect example for this one. Last weekend, I got a call for tech support, and it was a tech support volunteer at a church. And I began to ask questions about what kind of computer are you using? Are you using a hardware encoder? And because the inventory hadn't been done, he had no clue what anything was, or what kind of encoder they were using, or how it connects or how it works. So I felt bad for him because he wanted to know and he really wanted to help me. But if somebody had done that inventory and he had a little notebook sitting by the computer station or however you document that and say, your encoder is this, it's this brand, that, so that you know what it is. And you're using cameras and you're using microphones and you're using these other tools that connect it all together. You need a full inventory of that stuff so that when when the inevitable crash happens, something goes wrong, you can begin to work through your equipment and see what's failed.
And this is so important because I run into the same problem as well. And that is like somebody will, I'll ask them, what kind of a live encoder do you have? And it's like, what's that? And I don't know. And so, and look, we know we're working with volunteers. And so it's easy to roll our eyes, but we also know, because we've been in that seat before, that it is
Yes.
challenging. It's very challenging for volunteers, and it's even challenging for staff because you got to train these people, which we'll get into in a little bit. But it sure helps to have a good idea of what you're working with. And we'll talk about how you can document some of that stuff. But I think the thing you mentioned, Michael, was important, and that is if there's some kind of a notebook or a binder around, that can make things a lot easier for the volunteer.
Yeah, you don't have a volunteer doesn't have to know everything, but if they know where that binder is, they can flip it open and say, "Oh yeah, it says here that I am using a, you know,
Mhm.
this hardware encoder." And so instead of that volunteer being really frustrated because they can't help me help them,
Right.
they would go just flip it open and go, "Oh yeah, we have one of these."
Inventory all equipment. It is important. And again, I want to just emphasize, whether you've been doing streaming video for a long time or just started, these things are important. The devil is in the details, no pun intended. And it's important to get these details worked out. All right. Shall we move on here? Um, let's move on and let Mr. Well, I guess I'm up next here. Document connection types. All right. So again, kind of like what Michael said earlier, is I'm not expecting you or even your volunteers to know like every single connection that you've got. What is it? What does it do? You don't have to memorize something like this, but it would be good to at least have an idea and have some kind of an understanding that, hey, we have different connections here. And so when somebody says check your HDMI connection, you will at least have a little bit of an idea that, okay, this is, I think, what it looks like, as opposed to looking at an RCA cable. I have a little bit of a head start. I had a little bit of a head start on some of this stuff years ago because I was in radio, I was in broadcasting. So some of these connections I was somewhat familiar with. But some people, again, if you're a volunteer especially, you don't have a lot of experience with these different cables. And so if you can at least get an idea of what you're working with here, and again, documentation would be very helpful to have it in there. Then it will help you when somebody says jiggle the TRS cable. You'll know which cable to jiggle. So that's all I'm going to say about this, unless Steve or Mike want to add something more about these different connection types.
TRS is new to me, but it looks like a stereo audio cable there.
Look, it's an eighth inch. Well,
eighth inch stereo audio, right?
It looks that way to me.
Yeah, the other one's mono, the TS. I'm learning some things here.
I think that one's a quarter. That TRS is a quarter inch, like you had on old school headphones.
Yeah, I think that's actually right. I think you're right about that, but maybe not. I don't know. We should have put the eighth inch in there, and the eighth inch is what? So many millimeters? What is that called now?
Yeah,
I don't remember.
But even then, here we are doing this all the time, and I'm like, yeah, it's like this is super easy, man. Google the audio connect cables and connectors and print this off and put it in the notebook.
Yeah, which is what I did.
They don't need to know them all. They just need to know it looks like that.
Just have an idea. That's all we're saying. Just have an idea. We know there's a lot out here. All right. So now we'll let Mr. Steve Lacey talk a little bit about a physical layout.
So real life story. I volunteer at our church, and I normally run the video switcher in the back. And this wasn't too long ago, but we're pre-service, and so we're running in the stream and checking everything, out, and the band's rehearsing and all that stuff. And somebody comes in and says, we have no audio on the web. One of the guys that had actually put together one of the physical layouts of our church, and they've done a really good job just kind of laying out where things are and where they, what connects to what. So you have no audio. So, I mean, you could just start pulling on audio cables and just kind of randomly attacking things. But if you have a physical layout diagram or a schematic, then you know where to poke. Because if you've got a setup, you know where audio is coming from. You can start to go through and identify where the things are. And then, Phil, you jump to the next one. You can also identify, well, another thing to have is what the physical layout will tell you what's connected to what, and then the signal flow sometimes is pretty obvious based on the physical layout where things are coming from. So, for example, in our world, we have a mixer for the web, and the source for the mixer for the web is the mixing table for the house. So you can pull out this diagram, either a signal flow diagram or just the connection diagram. And so they knew that, hey, the sound's coming from the house soundboard to the web mixing soundboard to our video encoder device, and then going out on the web. And so they had the ability to go in and say, well, let's go upstream and see if we're getting sound from the house soundboard. And obviously, yep, we got sound there. Okay, that was good. Then we go down to, are we getting sound to the web mixing board? Yep, we're getting sound there. We can kind of hear there, but we're not getting it going out to the web. So we quickly were able to identify it's somewhere between my web mixing board and my hardware encoder that the problem is. So they know where to go look and what type of cable to pull on, because it's an audio cable and it's coming from them, and they start doing what Phil was talking about, jiggling cables or disconnecting cables. We'll disconnect a cable and go, that didn't work. Nothing changed. And I put it back in, nothing changed. They would try a different port for that same device and nothing happens. And then you figure out, I've got a cable that's gone bad. And so they're able to rectify the situation inside of like 2 minutes, because we had a diagram and we knew how things flowed, and we knew where to check. So if you don't have that, you just kind of go, and even if you're a volunteer, even having some of that information available to you, and we at our setup, they post it on the wall. They say, here's the layout, and we'll get into some other things. But I think this is like you have a neighbor coming to town, and you say, I need you to run to the grocery for me, and they have no map and they don't know where the grocery is. The chances of them being successful is going to be really tough. But if they have a map and they go, you go down here, hang a right down here, and the grocery store's here, and then you come back, your problem solved. So the key is create a map of your layout, and so that people can recover quickly, or at least be able to identify where the problems may be very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And by the way, I'll change that slide. I forgot on the bottom right, it says OBS to YouTube. Why would anybody want to stream to YouTube? I should have changed that to StreamingChurch.tv. Sorry about that. All right. So here's one of my favorite slides, because it's real life. Labels and cable, label your cables and your ports. Michael Gray, you know a thing or two about this, don't you?
Yes, I do. And I don't know about the rest of you, but when I see an image like that, it begins to stress me. So I have great joy at someone, or great appreciation for someone who's able to label and organize and make cables look like artwork, instead of what we have here, which looks like somebody threw up spaghetti all over the floor. So yeah, if you have giant messes of wires and you have no idea what each and every wire does or where it comes from, then you really are not going to be able to troubleshoot when something quits. And you guys who've done this for a long time know that in many cases a plug will work loose and it just needs some you need to put some, what's the liquid you put on it?
Loctite.
No, I'm talking about for electrical dielectric.
Yeah, the grease.
Dielectric grease. Yeah,
some kind of grease.
I believe it is as well.
Yeah.
So sometimes it can be that simple, but if you don't know what that cable is that's plugged in the back of that device, you jiggle them all and you break something else. Instead of fixing the one thing you're trying to fix, you break 3 other things in the process because you jiggled too hard and jiggled too many.
done that.
But yes,
Yeah.
these little labels, and you can get now at my shop, I have a cordless wireless printer that connects to my phone, and I print labels out on the fly as I go, because otherwise I can't
Nice.
find and get to anything. So you can put these labels on. They don't have to be fancy. They can be handwritten or whatever, but so many different ways to do this. And there are weirdos amongst us that love doing this kind of work. They just love organizing a giant mess of cables. And I appreciate them like crazy because it makes a giant difference in being able to track down
Do
what
you
to
think
plug where and why.
do you think Steve Lacy fits in that category you just
Yeah,
mentioned?
I think I probably do.
I
Well,
think that
actually, you should see behind my home stereo system. I did exactly this because it was behind some furniture, and you had to be a contortionist to try to get, and even the wall plugs. I'll have had all these things there, and I'm like, which one do I pull out? So yes, I went and labeled everything, and I think a key here is you got to label both ends. I mean, they may be
yes, yes.
That's
several
true.
hundred feet apart from each other,
Yeah.
but you need the one I talked about before, where our web mixing board is, yeah, probably a couple of 100 feet from the house mixing board, and it goes through lots of walls and stuff. And so, yeah, when you're installing this stuff is the best time to label both ends of these things. That way,
Mm-hmm.
you know what's going on. So, yeah, I do fit in this category, and it's saved me a bunch, because you're like,
Yeah.
I want to unplug my broken DVR, but I don't want to take the TV out that everybody's watching right now, and so labeling these
absolutely.
things are important.
Very important. It really is important. Again, these are details, but there's got to be somebody in your church or ministry that likes details. There's got to be a Steve Lacy there somewhere.
And they do just once.
Yeah, they'll usually have to do it just once. All right. So, Michael, let's talk about mapping network connection. So we talked about kind of the signal flow, and we talked about the physical diagram. But what's different about this?
Well, your network, what you're streaming or how you're streaming nowadays, it can be pretty robust because you may be using network to run your cameras or other devices within your system, but your network, your router especially, is the hub of getting your signal out of the building and streaming to your website. So knowing where the cables run, where they're connected. I mean, it used to be in a world a few years ago where we'd have to go start the router once a month, restart the router once a month. So know where that's at. Add again a page mapping specifically your network. And there's another piece of this that I didn't think about until I looked at the image again. Make sure that there aren't nefarious pastors connected to your network streaming funny cat videos and crashing your stream. You need to know everybody that's connected to that hub and where the computers are that could be crashing your stream.
That's a good point. That is a good point.
Another thing, just pointing out on this, because we have people that they go, well, I've got a separate network, but if they put this network map together, they'll realize that my separate network goes through the same modem and goes through the same ISP that goes to the internet. So really, I'm not helping myself much unless I understand the complete picture here. At our church, we had for a while, and I'm not recommending this for everybody, but we had 2 ISPs. So we had those connection that goes out to the internet cloud there. We had 2 separate ones.
Yeah. Well, and you guys don't do that anymore where you're at?
No, we don't do that anymore. I think times have changed to a certain degree. I mean, our biggest problem at our church is power going out. So that usually impacts everything.
And we'll talk
about
about
to roll into that thunderstorm season. So get ready.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, during monsoon season here in Tucson. Yeah. All right. So I'll address this: catalog software and hardware settings. So this is just a very simple thing I just threw up here on Google. Google has some great tools that are mostly free to use. So this is a Google spreadsheet, and I misspelled software encoder settings, very typical of me. But you will find, just a little example here of put down your encoder settings. I got maybe vMix. Some churches use multiple encoders, and so it's good to have the settings here as best as you can, as much detail as you can. And I even have the RTMP that, again, you can always, with our company, you can always log into the StreamingChurch.tv app and control panel and go to your streaming setup and go to your encoder settings and grab your credentials. But it's not such a bad idea to have this stuff categorized, cataloged, and you could have it there. So when there's a problem or somebody needs to do something, there it is for you, all there. And this is just the encoder settings, but you could put in your camera settings here, your resolutions for your cameras, your different things with your switcher, maybe some audio stuff. So you could load up this spreadsheet, and again, Google has all this stuff. There's other spreadsheets available as well, of course, you could use. But if you can make it handy, then people can quickly get to it and move quickly during a situation. Go ahead.
And kind of like, there are some people that this would be maybe helpful for people like us that have been around this for a little while. There's people out there that in the business world that can look at a profit and loss sheet and go, here's your problem. You need to get rid of this sales guy or whatever. And if you have a sheet like this from a streaming perspective or any other perspective, and they go, I'm having this problem where I get jitter in my this. And if you look at this, somebody can just look and go, I see where the problem is. You got this thing set on this, and this one down here is set on that, and those aren't going to work well together. Yeah. So this could be a useful little diagnostic sheet for
troubleshooting. Yeah.
To that end, with the power outages, I'm at Steve's church as well. With the power outages we used to have during monsoon season, it used to also wipe the settings out of the cameras. It was the biggest pain in the rear to go chase down. Now, what were those settings? Do I remember them? Who remembers the settings? If it had been documented like this, it's super easy at that point.
Absolutely. And again, this is very simple stuff you can do. It takes a little bit of time, but once you do it, you're good. Let's talk a little bit about some power sources, and we'll get to UPS here in a moment. Again, this is just something to familiarize yourself with and make sure your volunteers have an idea what these are and where they might be going. Michael mentioned something last week, which I thought was so good, and that is sometimes you get the rob Peter to pay Paul deal. You know what I mean by rob Peter to pay Paul? I need a power strip. Where can I get a power strip? Oh, go in the sound booth. There's a couple in the sound booth. There's probably one or two they don't really use. Just grab it. And so sometimes you go in and you find something missing in your sound booth or in your area where you do your streaming. So it would be good to have an idea, your power strips, where they're at, how they work. Some of them need to be reset from time to time. Just get an idea about that, because sometimes there's sneaky people in your church that might need to use something or borrow something, and they intend to bring it back, but they don't. All right, so let's talk about UPS. They're a great company. They provide some really good packaging.
That's not the kind of UPS.
That's not the UPS. UPS. Okay, this is really pretty important. UPS, I think, stands for uninterrupted power supply, right? And it's really a device that can provide you immediate backup power. In most cases, it's immediate. It should be connected to your electronic equipment. So when something goes out, something fails, an outlet fails, or you have a lightning strike like we do during monsoon, or something happens, it can many times prevent your data loss. It can prevent equipment damage. It can prevent some system downtime. And it's a temporary power supply is what it is. Now, it's really used for short-term stuff, blackouts, brownouts, I guess. surges and spikes can be a benefit to having one of these. They say line noise. They say it can eliminate line noise that you get sometimes. I don't know about that, but I guess that's true. And even some variation, I guess, in your frequency. Now, this is just one little example of it.
Yeah.
And this is what, about $100, I guess. But there's other ones.
Yeah.
And there's
there's
all
a lot to
sorts of
choose
ones.
from.
Yeah.
And it's also going to get the same protection feature that you get with higher end power strips, right? Where you get a lightning strike and you send 1,000 volts to your outlets in the house. It's not going to send your expensive equipment up in smoke. It's going to be a surge protector as well.
Yeah. And the way these work, if I remember, because I had one, the last church I was with, they actually have batteries in them, or one battery in them or something. And so, you want them plugged in, and so they'll kick in. And again, depending on the size you get is depending on the amount of time you're going to get. And so there's some really expensive ones that are bigger ones, and there are some small ones, and this is just an average one. And so I think we got some Q&A coming here. I forgot to mention that there is live Q&A here that we usually do at the very end. But I think one question that may come up will be, well, where should I put this? How many should I have? And whatever. And I'll let you guys maybe answer that. I mean, certainly you want to have your computer plugged into this. You probably want to have your live encoder plugged into it. And
any equipment you can't afford to lose.
Yeah, that's a good answer. That's a very good answer. Yeah. And again, maybe your router, I guess, or your modem, hard to say. Sometimes when the power goes out, it's going out not just at your church, but in the neighborhood. So it may not help you with internet. I don't know. Interesting story, and I don't want to drag this out too much, but we had an ice storm when I was pastoring. I was a senior pastor in Junction City, Kansas, and we had a bad ice storm. We were off for 3 or 4 days without power. But somebody, the cable company, actually had a little generator set up for their cable. And so if you had, I end up getting a little generator in my house to keep my fridge going and actually my furnace going. I had gas, and so I had an electric fan going. But we could actually watch TV and watch cable because down the street the cable company had a little generator by something on the line there. It was kind of funny, but and I don't know, I got off on that track. But anyhow, if you can have as much backup as possible as you can afford, it will certainly pay off in the long run. And
some electric companies and other electrical hardware suppliers can get you set up with a whole church UPS.
That's true.
To where it is like a generator that'll kick on and run, but they have battery versions as well. And they're like super electrical lightning protected devices that keeps your whole building safe from lightning strike. If you're in places like us that get a lot of extreme weather, then it's maybe worth it to protect your gear.
Absolutely. And again, they're not that expensive, relatively speaking, and you can get several and you'll be in good shape. All right, well, to move on, we're starting to run out of time. Record vendor and support info. I think I'm supposed to do this one, right? It's just, again,
fine.
Well, yeah, I mean, Mike, maybe it's yours, Mike, but I think it's a situation where, you just want to document stuff. And again, if something goes out, something gets broken, I mean, God forbid something gets stolen, you have some information here and you've got it somewhere where it's easily accessible.
Yeah, I think this one might help you to understand who your better vendors are. Because if you've got a lot of devices and a lot of blanks on this piece of paper, then you probably chose the wrong devices. So support, you're going to need it at some point for devices, for equipment. And if you bought a device that has no support, well, we're here to help you with anything. And we do a lot of support for different hardware encoders and things that I had one yesterday. I'm still trying to figure out what the name of that encoder was. It was Warrior something or other.
Yeah, I looked that up. I couldn't find it either.
There was a
game.
So
there's some kind of an online game. Maybe the guy was trying to do an online game or something.
I don't know. But yeah, having that information and just just one piece for hours. I'm often the Sunday guy doing Sunday support. If you have an emergency, use the phone first. Just call if you can. And if you can't do that, jump into chat. And then if you can't do that, then send email. But each one is a little bit slower, email being potentially however slow it takes to get it to me and see it and then respond.
And unfortunately, as you put this list together, you're going to find that almost everyone on your list, other than us, is only going to support you during the week. So
Yep.
you're going to have to wait for Monday
Big
through
difference.
through Friday to get some help.
Yeah. Well, put it down, list it though, because
Yeah.
fortunately we had somebody, in fact, actually is when I was working at a live church, we had somebody that I think stole some equipment. He had drug issues, and so he stole some of our equipment. I think that was at a live. So we had some documentation, on things. But anyhow, all right, Michael, test and verify. When should we do this? A couple minutes before the stream starts?
Please don't. Please don't. Please don't. Well, and again, on the weekend, I had another occurrence of this playing out because somebody went and changed some pretty substantial settings on their encoder and didn't do a test stream after they made the change, rolled into Sunday morning and oops, the encoder won't work. The stream won't work. Oh no, what do we do now? Let's call Mike.
But
Which
you
I'm
were able
happy
to
to
help them.
do, but I'm sorry. I was like, man, if you make a change or you upgrade a software, which you should always do in the week and never, ever, 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 ever do it on Sunday, then yeah, do a test stream. Turn it on, make sure it works, make sure you can see it and hear it, and it's not doing anything weird because the details really, really matter when it comes to testing and making sure everything's working right.
Yeah, and again, you can always call us if hopefully you're using us, StreamingChurch.tv, and we'll be there for you, especially during the week if you want to test. All right, run out of time here. Steve Lacey, what's a local digital backup?
This just kind of goes along the whole backup line. If you aren't willing to lose it, you want to back it up. And one of the most common one that we run into is they'll stream their recording and rely on server side recording. And if your network goes down or it has a glitch or something, you might not have that network recording available. So always have a recording. If you're going to counting on something, back it up locally. So record local and you can rely on the other one. That way you don't need the backup. Before we went into this webinar, Phil's like, who's got the backup slides? And I made the statement, says, I went ahead and backed them up just now. And so now I'm confident we are not going to need them. So take that attitude.
You Murphy-proofed the webinar.
Yes, had I not made the backup, that's exactly when this whole thing would go down and we'd need it. But make a backup and you'll keep those demons away.
Yeah, and you can back up especially we talk about video live encoders. Most of them have the option to record and save on your computer. If it's hardware, that's another question for me. I don't know if depending on you can always do
most
and even like the graphic I have on here. I mean, there's backup drives that you can attach to things. Mm-hmm. If not just using what's on your computer, right?
Actually, at our church, we purchased a gigantic external drive and plug it into a computer, and then that's where we record the services to as they stream.
Yeah. All right. Here's just important. This is so important. And who's talking about this? Mike, share and train with your team. Share and train.
So it goes back to that scenario I talked about at the beginning. So support pastor, tech director sets up a whole system, and he or she is busy on the weekend, so you got volunteers running everything, and something crashes. If he hasn't handed off that information to those folks, and again, that's why we say put it in a notebook, because all I got to do is flip it open, and then I can ask them questions, and we can get where we're going. But if you've left that volunteer in the dark and haven't given them this information, then you're putting them at a huge disadvantage.
Yeah, absolutely.
So train them, and give them the book.
And it's good to, meetings are not my favorite thing, but I think it's good occasionally have some meetings with your team, make it a little fun, but also make it a little educational at the same time, and make sure everybody's on the same page with you as far as your vision, your goals, and as Michael's talking about, know where your equipment is and know what it does and how to get access to things when you need to in a hurry. It's so important to do. And, we run in this all the time, doing support here at StreamingChurch.tv. The person that helps set things up is gone. They went to another church or they left or somebody's not happy and left. And so, if you don't have any documentation, it can be a difficult thing. All right. So we're going to do some Q&A here. Want to encourage you, though, to check out our other webinars. And we also have a webinar coming up next month. It's called Stream Smarter, Connect Deeper. It's a free webinar on digital ministry RX tools and engagement and impact. We've created this, and we think it's pretty nifty. And you can learn more about it by signing up for the next webinar, which will tell you that information when we figure it out. All right. Again, check out our past webinars, webinar.streamingchurch.tv/webinar. This webinar will be on there eventually on the recorded side of things. Don't forget, we have other resources. We have a great tool called dailydive365.com. Got a special offer still going on that. You can take your sermons and it will create 7, count them 7, if you want, 7 daily devotionals based on your sermons. And we're not just talking clips here. We're talking stuff that's been created from the content of your sermons. And it can be put in a devotional form. It's got other uses as well. Don't forget about the Church Solutions podcast. Don't forget about our blog.streamingchurch.tv. And then, of course, our product, streamingchurch.tv. All right. It is time for your questions. We like to do some Q&A. And so we're going to go ahead and do some of that here if I can figure out how to stop sharing here. And I want to go to a live shot here. And I don't know how to do that here. Hold on a second. You would think that there it is. The little button that says stop sharing. All right. Yeah, here we are. So time for some Q&A here. If you have questions, I didn't push this as much as I like, but you can put them in the chat here if you have some questions. We got a couple here that we can throw out to the team here with some Q&A. For churches on a tight budget, I don't know any churches that are not on a tight budget, but for the churches that are on a tight budget, what, in your opinion, is the most impactful low-cost change or changes that we can make to improve our stream quality and reliability? That's a big one, actually. Anybody want to jump in there?
I mean, almost everything we went over here is a no-cost solution for. It's just really put together some insurance, because you will have issues. I mean, I don't know if we've talked to any churches that can say, nope, never had an issue with anything. Everything's always worked first time and every time. But this is just really most of the stuff is no cost way to it's going to require a little bit of time maybe and some paper and some communication. Yeah. It's just put your insurance together, knowing that these things are going to happen and have these resources available when they happen. Then you get through them really quickly.
Yeah. You also have multiple levels of cobbled together setups. So if you're on the really low end of cobbled together, then if you haven't done these things we talked about today, you're going to have issues on a weekly basis. So over time, by labeling it, identifying it, you're also going to find where your weak points are within your setup and your system. And you should be able to say, okay, we've got a little bit of money to spend. We're going to replace these 2 cable sets because they're wiggly and they don't stay connected very well anymore. And we're going to begin to replace the stuff that is causing you weekly crash.
I would say too, and I know those are all important. I think there's so many different layers here. I mean, obviously, if you stream with us, have our contact information, as Michael mentioned earlier. Have it handy. because we can certainly try to help you. I've been in the position, Mike's been in the position, well, all of us here, Steve has. I mean, something goes wrong, your first thing is, oh, what are we doing? Freak out kind of a thing. And so sometimes if you talk to somebody like us, we can maybe help you have less freak out and maybe go about it a little more logically. Because sometimes when you're panicking, the logic kind of goes away. And so we can help you maybe with some logical first steps.
Yeah, and we'll get somebody calling saying, the audio went out on the stream, and they go, well, it's StreamingChurch's fault, so let's call StreamingChurch. And they haven't done any of this work to identify where could my audio have gone out. And you're going to the very end of the stream. You want to go to the very head of the stream and figure out, so.
But we can direct you to do that. So
we normally do. We start walking people. That's the first thing we do. Nope, there's not a problem on our servers with an audio thing. Let's start checking your audio out, and let's start with trying to figure out where the audio is coming from, where it's going to, whatever the problem may be.
Yeah, we don't. It's very common to think, well, it's us. It's StreamingChurch. Something went wrong. Must be those guys. That's common, and we don't want to discourage you from calling us. Go ahead and call us, and we'll try to figure it out. All right. Am I missing some of the other questions here? I can't see. I have so many screens here open that. Here's a question about kind of, I guess, along the same lines. How do you recommend handling internet bandwidth fluctuations? Our internet seems to go up and down as far as speed. How do you handle that during a service? That's a kind of a technical question. If your internet is not real stable, well, besides calling your company, there are some encoders. Go ahead.
There's lots you can do. I mean, as firsthand things is number one, and our church was doing that. I mentioned we had 2 ISPs for a while, and we had the congregation and the staff on one and the streaming on another one. So you could do things like, we're going to make the Wi-Fi password protected during the service. And that's going to keep, Larry and Joe from streaming the game in their pocket while they're at church. That it's going to keep that internet from fluctuating so much because it's got to serve a lot. There's things you can do, even just first steps to take before you start finding out, well, maybe I do have a problem with my internet. Or maybe it's because, as run into people, says they're uploading the Dropbox from the first service during the second service. Mm-hmm. Dropbox upload is chewing up 80% of the internet, and they can't stream on the second service because of it. So there's a lot of things you can do that if you just kind of identify what's going on, you can take corrective action.
Yeah, I did notice on some encoders, I remember Flash Media Live encoder used to, and their Flash Media Live is obsolete now. I talked to somebody, though, not too long ago that was still trying to use it. But they had a thing called variable bit rate, and it would actually, if your internet was having a problem, it would kind of reduce your video bit rate, and it was kind of cool. And there are some encoders that have that feature. I can't remember off the top of my head which ones it do now. But there are some that if you've got some stuff that's out of your control, so in other words, it's not like the thing Steve was just mentioning. It's something outside your range, outside your facility. There are the variable bitrate settings on some encoders that will allow you to check that box, and it will change your deal. The other thing, well, I'll just go on from there. Those are all good recommendations. Here's another question. Is there ever a way that I can just have my stream automatically start and stop without having to turn it on myself? So webinar, there's a device called a webcaster that is no longer made anymore. That you could do that with our API settings. Oh, you know what? There's one I just realized. I was doing some research, and Magewell has a live encoder, which is under $1,000, and they do have a setting where you can have it start streaming. You can set it to schedule the stream and to stop. And I didn't know that until a couple of weeks ago. Nice. So that's under $1,000, So it's not like a Blackmagic ATEM that's $300 or $400, but it's a hardware encoder. So that was the first I've seen of something like that. I don't have any other answers to that to say, but get a Magewell and let us know how it goes. Or Magewell, I guess it's called. Beyond fixing these images, beyond fixing these issues, what are some proactive maintenance routines? Some routines that you would recommend for streaming equipment to prevent problems before they start?
Attend our webinars regularly. I mean, I think a lot of this stuff is one-time things. And if you do these one-time things, you're going to eliminate 80% of the problems you have. I mean, as far as routines, what we do at our church is we have a rehearsal and we do a practice session. So that's a regular routine. And so we discover all the problems. So we have this kind of thing going where we said, if the rehearsal completely falls on its face, we know that the live service is going to be just fine. But if the rehearsal is no problems at all, we're a little nervous about the live service going on. So that's a routine that we do at our church, just regularly rehearse everything and exercise everything before we have to count on it.
Yep.
I would say
Mike said that in the chat. He said, practice, practice, practice. And when you go live early, not just at the top of the hour.
that's a very good point too. The other thing too is if you don't want to have a full blown rehearsal that Steve's church does, at least make sure you're running some testing. Test the microphones beforehand, long beforehand, if you can, and test the camera or cameras, and have make sure test all these things. Make sure boot up the computer early, boot up the live encoder early. It's not bad. It's not terrible to start the live stream a little bit early. You can start it maybe early enough just to make sure, and then you can shut it down and then turn it back on a few minutes before. I always recommend people start their stream a few minutes before, even if it's just an empty stage,
Yeah.
or you can run slides too.
When we were streaming, yes, I found that I had better audience retention if we started 15 minutes early. It allowed people to gather, and as they gathered and we hit the top of the hour for the service, there was more conversation and chat and involvement and celebration and everything else for the online service by having that buffer of a slideshow going in the background for 10-15 minutes before the service starts.
Yeah, I think that's
another thing I think churches don't recognize a lot is they're like, well, I'm here, I set it up, and I shut it down, and it's going to be where I left it when I come next week, so I can roll in 5 minutes before the service and I'll be fine. And as we discovered midweek, our youth group was using all our equipment. So you come back, if you waited just a few minutes later, well, I left this thing in 100% shape. Now it's all honked up again. So people don't recognize
my soundboard.
Yeah.
Somebody made a design out of the sliders on the soundboard.
Yeah. So
and let me just suggest this too. Try to keep your area really clean and neat. I mean, look, there are a lot of us tech people are slobs, but if you can keep, get rid of the Circle K cups, get rid of whatever somebody's snacking on during the service and the remnants of the trash. If you can keep that thing clean and organize, it will help a lot. I hate to narc on my wife, but she has her own office here and she does some work with a ministry, and I dread going into her office to try to help her with something. I mean, it's like sorting through a jungle. I mean, it's just, I hate to be, I love my wife very much, but it's a mess. Yeah. And so when I'm trying to help her fix something on her computer, it's just, the stress level just goes off the map with me, because it's like, I gotta try to get through this stuff and knock something over to get to the mouse and to click the HDMI setting. It's just terrible. So try to keep things neat and in order. Look, these things that we're talking about, we're going to end here, but these things are all detailed things. They're not really overly complicated, right? They're not heavy lifting. It's just got to get on these things and then kind of stay on them from time to time. And as Steve said, if you can just do a lot of this stuff, it will eliminate probably 95% of your problems. All right. Any more questions before we go adios here? Folks, thank you so much for spending time with this webinar with us today. We hope it's helped you. And as always, we are available just go to StreamingChurch.tv. And if we're not there during business hours, you can click on the little chat box, leave us a message. We'll get it. We'll call you back. We want to help your church whatever we can. Even if you don't do business with us, we would certainly be glad to help you with some kind of a question and an answer that could help you with what you're trying to do. So God bless you guys. Thank you for spending some time. And as always, it's a pleasure being with Steve and Michael here. Thank you. And again, thank you folks for being with us during the webinar. My name is Phil Thompson. We'll catch you again on a next webinar next month.